Good evening, everyone. I am Pastor Karen Sapio, here from Claremont Presbyterian Church, and I would like to welcome all of you who are gathered here tonight for this event, either in our sanctuary or through our live stream, for the premiere of Pandemic Requiem by Geri DeMasi. A little over a year ago, our worship team was considering how we might plan for worship as we looked toward the beginning of worship in person after a hiatus of more than 12 months. We felt that it couldn't simply be going back to exactly what we had done before. It needed to inspire and challenge and equip us to be part of the healing and the transformation of our community as we headed into the post-pandemic future. What resources, we thought, do we have in our tradition that can be repurposed, reinvented to help us face what is ahead? That is when the idea of a new requiem came to us. In its most ancient form, a requiem was simply a mass for the dead. Then in the Middle Ages, certain chants and other music were added. And then, starting around the 1600s, noted composers began to write more complex choral and orchestral music in the requiem form. Mozart wrote one, Brahms wrote one, Verdi wrote one, Fauré wrote one. The requiem form began to transcend its roots in church liturgy to become a means by which composers could reflect on grief and loss and hope and enable their audiences to do so as well. In the 20th century, there were several requiems written in the wake of World War I. Then during World War II, a group of imprisoned Jewish musicians at Theresienstadt concentration camp in Czechoslovakia performed Verdi's Requiem as a lament and as a protest against the genocide that they witnessed daily. Then in 1961, British composer Benjamin Britten produced the War Requiem for the rededication of Coventry Cathedral, which had been ruined by German bombs during the Blitz. Tonight, we humbly hope that we are continuing this tradition here in our community. We hope that this new pandemic requiem will help our community lament, heal, and look forward in hope. Thank you all for being here. And I'll invite forward our first reader, City Council person Jennifer Stark.
On March 12, 2020, at 12:51 p.m. in the Claremont Courier, the first death from the novel coronavirus in Los Angeles County occurred Monday, March 9th, at Pomona Valley Hospital. According to a release from the hospital, the March 11th letter from the hospital states that a patient admitted to the hospital on March 9th was confirmed positive for the novel coronavirus, soon to be known as COVID-19. The patient was admitted to the hospital in full cardiac arrest and was immediately provided life-saving care to stabilize her condition, the hospital stated. The patient's husband arrived and disclosed the patient's travel history and additional symptoms, and the patient was immediately placed in isolation. Samples from the patient were submitted to the public health lab for COVID-19 testing, the hospital stated. Unfortunately, the patient died shortly after admission due to complications from her illness, the letter said.
There are no confirmed cases at the Claremont colleges. However, in an abundance of caution, the 5 undergraduate universities have canceled all in-person classes and will move to an online format beginning March 30th. Some colleges, like Claremont McKenna, released detailed plans for the remaining semester to its faculty and students. Quote, students will be required to depart campus for home or another off-campus location as soon as possible and no later than March 23rd, President Hiram Shodosh said in an email. Our expectation is that all students will make arrangements to move out of their on-campus rooms and vacate campus for this academic year by that day at the latest, he said. Scripps President Laura Tiedens indicated the college will also move classes to an online format, but indicated the situation will be reassessed on April 18th. Pomona College said on its website, students are required to leave campus by 5 p.m. on March 18th and, quote, should not expect to return to campus this semester, unquote. Online instruction will continue at Pomona until the end of the year.
March 13th, 2020. Claremont Unified School District reversed course today, announcing it will close all school sites to students effective immediately. CUSD Superintendent Jim Elasser said yesterday that any decision to close schools would be made at the direction and recommendation of the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. But today, CUSD decided to act on its own. We're doing this just out of an abundance of caution, Mr. Elasser said. The LA County Office of Education is now recommending that schools in LA County school districts close, but we actually made that decision prior to that announcement. In an announcement Friday afternoon, CUSD said, effective Monday, March 16th, 2020, schools within Claremont Unified School District will be closed to students in an effort to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and will reopen on Monday, April 13th, unless conditions call for an extension.
Requiem aeternam, dona eis 2020. Karen and I really looked forward to 2020. My wife, Karen, and I really looked forward to 2020. Our son, Clayton, was set to graduate from Columbia University. Those tuition payments would finally be over, and we would get to celebrate in style with a New York vacation. A virus thought otherwise. Columbia had already gone to remote learning in early March. But Clayton told us he favored staying in the city since he had access to the university library collection. On Saturday, March 14th, things changed. We were at a dinner party before it was widely known that the virus was an airborne spreader. During the party, I received a text message from Clayton. He thought he should leave the city sooner rather than later. He was going to need some help moving. Things were getting ominous. Clayton didn't know that as soon as I saw his text, I planned to fly to New York the very next day to move him out. And so, on Sunday night, I boarded a red-eye to New York LaGuardia, connecting through Atlanta. I couldn't sleep. Monday morning promised to be a race against the clock. And I had just begun reading The Great Influenza by John Barry. Barry's book recounted the horrific 1918 flu pandemic in disturbing detail. Barry's book was my overnight companion. Is it any wonder the darkening clouds would not yield to sleep? Monday, my flight touched down at 9:38 a.m. Time cooperated. Clayton was waiting for me. He quickly made multiple trips up and down his 6th-floor walk-up to load our rental. I simply did what all New Yorkers do when they are loading a vehicle. I double-parked on the narrow Morningside Heights residential street and waited. In about an hour, we were on our way. We crossed the George Washington Bridge, headed west at exactly noon. A planned week-long celebration was shortened to a 2-hour and 22-minute evacuation. We drove west for 3.5 days, seeing already closed up restaurants and others offering takeout only. To the relief of the rest of the family, we arrived home on Thursday afternoon. While we were driving cross-country, our daughter Clara arrived directly home from her spring break. The College of Worcester went remote during the break. About 2 hours after we arrived home, Governor Newsom announced the nation's first statewide stay-at-home order.
Delictorum June 1st, 2020. Demonstrators gathered at the corner of Indian Hill and Foothill Boulevards in Claremont Monday afternoon as part of a nationwide movement to protest the killing of George Floyd while in police custody. The protest started in Minneapolis last week, where Mr. Floyd died. However, by the weekend, the sometimes violent clashes were happening across the nation with hundreds of thousands of participants. Locally, the demonstration was organized by Claremont Disarm Hate. A group of Claremont High School students formed last summer after the mass shooting in El Paso. Over 100 people attended the 3 p.m. rally, which became a march as the protesters walked down Indian Hill to Memorial Park.
On January 14th, 2021, the Courier reported, while the world looked on in horror last Wednesday as the United States Capitol was breached by a violent, deadly mob, former Claremont resident and Courier reporter Mark Rodd was inside the building as the insurrection was underway. While inside the Capitol, he had little idea where to hide or where the rioters were headed. He arrived at the Capitol building around 8:30 and noticed a few extra security patrols circling the building on the east side. Facing the Supreme Court, a small group of protesters were gathering. It wasn't unlike the typical early morning scenes he'd been witnessing in the days leading up to January 6th. Throughout the day, he began to notice swelling crowds outside the Capitol. It was about 1:30 p.m. that he had his first indication that something bad was going on. Quote, "I saw that portions of the barrier that had been broken through and saw that police were trying to move them back into place. But then a lot of people who were lined up along them started shaking the fences, and then the whole thing came down. There was a congressman who was standing next to me, and we were staring out the window, and he was just, oh my God. Then a flurry of action, and one of the police officers said, okay, everybody needs to go down to the tunnel now, we're moving. At this point, my heart really started pounding. I could feel it pounding in my chest. I could feel it pounding in my head." End quote.
Testament On Monday, Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors Chair Ilda L. Solis signed an executive order directing the county's Department of Public Health to make COVID-19 vaccination appointments available to residents 65 years of age and older, beginning on January 21. The COVID-19 vaccine rollout has been an enormous undertaking, especially during an unprecedented surge where cases, hospitalizations, and deaths continue to skyrocket, Supervisor Solis said in a statement. However, if we are ever to get out of this dark winter, it is critical that we make headway vaccinating people 65 years of age and older as soon as possible. On Tuesday, the county will launch its 5 large-capacity coronavirus vaccination sites, including one at the Pomona Fairplex in Laverne. Los Angeles County Department of Public Health is only offering the vaccine to healthcare workers and the staff and residents of skilled nursing facilities. The county reports 1,873 cumulative cases in Claremont as of Monday, and sadly, 7 more deaths for a total of 37. This reflects 162 new cases over the last week, which indicates that the community spread here is still quite high, and as a result, residents should take the risk of being infected seriously when venturing outside one's household.
The year 2019 had been a difficult year personally for me, as my family and I were supporting my sister Yvonne as she valiantly fought the progressive ravages of lung cancer. One of the main reasons I was able to endure that period was because of the support and understanding of my girlfriend Karen. Before my sister passed away, I told my sister about my plan to pop the question, and she was pleased and excited that she wouldn't be leaving me all alone.
After knowing each other for about 4 years, and after some significant consideration, we got engaged in December of 2019. We announced the engagement at the church Christmas party, and everyone was excited about what the future might have in store for us.
We looked forward to so much. A huge wedding reception that would also be a family reunion, a honeymoon, trips, family events, get-togethers with friends.
In early January of 2020, we were discussing the emerging news reports of a new virus in China. Geri asked, "How is this virus different?" And I replied that it was a new virus that had not appeared in humans before.
Later that month, I made a trip to Northern California to begin the arduous process of settling my sister's estate. 3 days after getting off the plane, I endured 2 weeks of the most severe, relentless coughing that I have ever experienced. It was very different from anything else I had before. I look back and I still wonder what that was.
As the pandemic took hold, it became apparent that some of our plans might have to be modified. We decided to plan on an April 2021 wedding. Surely, the worst of the pandemic would be over in 15 months, right?
Right?
But then we received some additional news. My son Brian, who's in the Navy, announced he would be deployed overseas starting in September of 2020 and would be gone at least 9 months. He told us that, "I'd love to attend your wedding, but due to deployment, I would need it to happen before I leave or after." And after his deployment, the Navy wouldn't let him come back for the birth of his firstborn son.
So then we had to scramble, and many of our more grandiose ideas had to be tabled. Serendipitously, we had the great fortune of our involvement with this church, and Pastor Karen and the church community moved mountains to make the wedding happen. I told wife Karen that God must want this to happen because even during a pandemic, it seems like he's rolling out a 16-lane freeway for us. Our dear, wonderful friends Ken and Teddy Warner offered to host a reception for us in their backyard, and all the other details seemed to fall into place very rapidly.
So our wedding would certainly be different than what we had envisioned. Because of the health restrictions, our grand plan for a huge family event was replaced by a very intimate gathering of 25 people, all wearing masks. Because a major family reunion was impossible, our friend Tony Becker agreed to stream the wedding on Facebook to our out-of-state relatives. The reception was small, with no dancing, but could not have been more enjoyable. There was so much laughter and love.
Even with all these restrictions and the omnipresent influence of the pandemic at every turn, our wedding was an incredibly joyful event. But we're just now able to host gatherings with friends in our new home. And so far, our only trip has been one single weekend excursion to Morro Bay for our first anniversary. Hopefully, if the pandemic recovery holds, we'll have more trips on the horizon.
Yes, you still owe me a honeymoon.
August 5th, 2021. Los Angeles County is experiencing a rapid increase in COVID-19 infections. In the past 4 weeks, cases have increased 20-fold from just 124 on June 21st to an average of more than 3,000 cases last week. On Wednesday, Public Health reported 3734 new cases, the highest in a single day since February 2nd. Also, the positivity rate hit 6.2% this week after reaching a low of 0.7% over 1 month ago. The Delta variant is the current dominant strain in Los Angeles County, representing 96% of specimens collected for sequencing between July 18th and 24th. This is consistent with the rise of Delta nationwide, as just 2 weeks ago, the CDC estimates that Delta strains accounted for 83% of COVID-19 cases, according to the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. The combination of a highly contagious Delta variant and a large number of people who remain unvaccinated is driving the surge. However, the county has also reported that breakthrough infections, cases in which fully vaccinated people test positive, are on the rise as well. The good news for those who are inoculated against coronavirus: the vaccine is very effective at reducing the severity of the disease. The evidence continues to show that vaccination offers the most protection from COVID and the variants of the virus. Each of the vaccinated has been thoroughly tested and continues to undergo intense safety monitoring. All 3 vaccines being administered in LA County are highly effective in preventing serious disease, hospitalizations, and death from COVID-19, public health officials said in a statement. The surge in new cases has apparently motivated some fence sitters in the states, has just seen significant increases in new vaccinations over the past 2 weeks. From July 24 to 31, an average of 44,000 California residents received the first shot of the vaccine, up from 37,300 a week before, according to Los Angeles Times. The average a week before that was 31,100. Across the state, 61.7% of Californians have received at least 1 dose. However, LA County is doing much better. Countywide, 71.7% of people over the age of 16 and 88.9% of seniors 65 and older are now vaccinated, according to LA County Public Health. This statistic is critical because the most vulnerable populations here are well protected against the current surge, making it extremely unlikely that we will see an overflowing emergency room and high death rates in the winter surge. However, people are getting sick and hospitals have seen significant increases of COVID-19 cases, including 1,242 people currently hospitalized, 22% of whom are in the ICU. Tragically, 16 people have died, including 1 child. Sadly, public health has confirmed one of today's reported COVID-19 deaths is a young person under the age of 12. The child who passed away was hospitalized with COVID-19 and had underlying conditions, officials said in a statement. Here in Claremont, cumulative cases were 2,365 2 weeks ago and are now 2,447, an increase of 14% or 82 new infections. Fortunately, no new deaths have been reported in Claremont. The vaccination rate in Claremont for people over the age of 16 has ticked up slightly from 64% 2 weeks ago to 65% as of July 30th. However, our youth have really come through the community, with 76.7% of residents 12 to 18 receiving at least 1 dose. This is despite the fact that the inoculation was not available to people under 18 until mid-spring. About 92% of Claremonters over the age of 65 are inoculated.
August 26, 2021. Claremont students are returning to in-person fall classes for the first time since 2019. As we mark the second full academic year, COVID-19 has altered time-honored back-to-school rituals. Claremont Unified School District's 10 campuses will open their doors Wednesday, September 1. Claremont's public elementary and secondary schools are in some ways back to square one after this summer's brief respite in new COVID infections. Hospitalizations and deaths raised hopes that things were headed back to a version of normal. But by the end of July, the Delta variant was rampaging, causing more than 80% of new COVID-19 cases in the United States. And those hopes were largely dashed. So CUSD begins this year. Its first fall starts since 2019, with masks required indoors on all of its campuses for staff and students alike, save a small percentage of its 6,550 pupils or employees who may qualify for a medical exemption. Mask wearing is optional while outdoors. Another major concern this year is returning students' mental health. The pandemic has ravaged routines and peer support systems, and isolation has stifled social interaction. Recent research from C.S. Mott Children's Hospital in Michigan found that 46% of 977 parents of teens reported their child had shown signs of a new or worsening mental health condition since the start of the pandemic. Teen girls seem to be more prone to anxiety and worry than guys, with 36% reporting an increase compared to 18% of males, the study concluded. Our staff is really kind of watching our students and how they respond and integrate back into the classroom and observing them, Mr. Cuff said. They're going to work hard to build a community because that sense of community with the group and sense of belonging is what's critical for kids to feel comfortable and safe on campus as they come back, Mr. Ward said.
January 6th, 2022. Kicking off 2022, Claremont received troubling news. As of Wednesday, Los Angeles County Department of Public Health recorded 628 new COVID-19 infections in the city over the previous 2 weeks. The winter surge is likely driven by holiday travel, winter weather, and the less dangerous but still deadly Omicron variant. The rise in cases has prompted many questions in Claremont business owners. How will the surge affect business traffic? Will these new infections prompt closures? Are we in for another year-long roller coaster ride like 2020 and 2021? Unfortunately, only time would tell. A recent update statewide mandate requires people to wear masks inside public spaces and businesses until February 15th, with narrow exceptions. After consulting with staff last Wednesday, Claremont Craft Ales decided to close its tasting room and patio due to recent surge. However, they are still offering curbside pickup. The main problem that remains for the brewery, along with other mom and pop shops, is that they don't know when this winter surge will cease. COVID-19 has also affected Claremont gyms, including Fit Rituals, a 3,000 square foot indoor studio. It seems that the public is aware of the protocols and willing to step up to the plate, and customers rarely make much of a fuss about wearing masks indoors. While still significant, overall, the recent increased caseload has not been a game changer for Claremont businesses. However, only time will tell.
It was around 2014 that we originally started working with our adoption agency. They told us at the outset that the way adoptions go, it could happen in an instant or it could take years. By 2020, it had crept up to 6 years of waiting. Dad was now firmly into his 5th decade on Earth. We didn't know how much longer we could wait. And we'd begun to despair that it would ever happen and had begun wondering out loud if it was time to throw in the towel. And then on Monday, November 9th, deep in the lockdown, a phone call came from our social worker. There's a little girl, but there's a risk. Normally, the agency works things out so that the child is released for adoption in one day, but that didn't happen here, which meant that if we took her home, there was a 6-month window where she could be taken away from us at a moment's notice. And did we want to take that risk? I remember walking into our guest room, the one room in the house that all along we knew would become the baby's room, and I began to imagine it with a child. And as I stood there in that imagining, the fears began to wane, and the excitement and hope began to build. And when I talked with my wife, Lisa, later, it turned out she had done the same thing, and we decided to take the risk. And thus began what we call our 3-day pregnancy. We called our social worker back, and we said, "We'll do it. We'll take her." She said, "Okay," looking at the calendar, "you can come on Thursday." Thursday? Wait, this Thursday? Yes, and you have to pick the name. Oh, okay, when? Now. We hadn't even met her yet. So right there on the phone, we picked a name. And we went to work, out Out from the guest room came the guest bed and all the furniture that was in it, and paint went up on the walls of the room right away, with hopefully enough time for the room to air out before she came. We assembled the crib and the changing table, and we threw up on the walls the decorations that we had acquired over the years, madly setting things up and trying to get whatever we needed to welcome a child. What do we need to welcome a child? Late Wednesday night found us at Target, overwhelmed, buying a bassinet and clothes and bottles and what else? What do we need right now and what can wait until later? And somehow that night we got some sleep, and Thursday morning we got up and I put on this shirt. It's got little bicycles and cars and Vespa scooters on it. It seemed perfect. And we went to the agency. We went into the office wearing our masks and sanitizing, and we signed a whole bunch of paperwork, and we waited until the foster mom showed up. And then we went in the room to meet her. My wife Lisa walked in first, but for some reason the foster mom put the baby in my arms. And there we were, all of us masked, and I was holding our daughter. The first feeling was shock, and then something else, a love that I can't explain, and I thought, I never knew I could feel like this. And I thought, is this how God feels about us? There were some more little details to discuss there as we started to get to know her. We gave her a bottle. We had 2 diaper changes in the hour or so that we were there. One with number 2 and one with number 1. And then we left with a baby. Friends of ours met us right outside the agency with a stroller for us to use. Others showed up at our house with food, and later others with gifts who knocked on the door and then stepped back as we opened the door. One person showed up with a mountain of diapers and wipes and clothes and some wonderful little thing called a boppy. In some of the darkest days of this pandemic, a new light shone into our lives, a realization of hope. A gift that we had waited for. And oh, was she worth the wait. Welcome home, little girl.
January 22nd, 2022. For a city that loves its trees, January 21st, 2022 was truly a night to remember. No neighborhood was spared as hours of sustained wind, punctuated by severe gusts, toppled trees, damaged homes, and downed power lines. The gusts began at sundown, but the truly terrifying wind kicked in around 11 p.m. and continued into the early morning hours. By daybreak, it was still, and the sad inventory of the night's fury came to full light. The giant coastal live oak and memorial park, under which the city holds its Veterans Day observance, is gone. So too is one of the last remaining eucalyptus trees on College Avenue, planted by the founders of Claremont. As of Saturday morning, up to 1,300 homes were without power, and the traffic signals on Foothill Boulevard were not working. Fallen trees that blocked small side streets were taped off and left lying on the pavement while authorities attended to the major roads. During previous windstorms, the city made quick work of clearing all the streets. So the fact that some trees were left for later was a true testament to the storm's power.
March 11th, 2022. Nearly 2 days to the day from when they abruptly shut their doors after the coronavirus pandemic took hold in the United States, Claremont schools will reach a symbolic milestone Monday when masks will no longer be required on their campuses. California Governor Gavin Newsom's September 28th announcement that at schools and child care facilities, masks will not be required, but will be strongly recommended, no doubt leaves many feeling a sense of relief. There are some who will continue to mask up though, either due to being immunocompromised or living with someone who is, or out of an abundance of caution. I know it is welcome news to many people, and a little concerning to many people as well, and we have to be cognizant of that, said CUSD Assistant Superintendent Human Services Kevin Ward. But personally, I think it'll be nice for those that are ready to be able to take them off indoors and see their smiles again. Of course, the looming possibility of another COVID surge could append all this good feeling. It's certainly not a guarantee that the numbers will swell, but as we've seen over the past 2 years, the virus does nothing, if not ebb and flow. Yeah, that's the $10,000 question, one district official said. Certainly, I think if we go to the higher levels and have to put indoor masking back into place, I think you're going to have a lot of upset people. So for now, and with luck, for months to come, many kids, faculty, staff, and administrators are getting a major lift from the surprisingly liberating act of dropping their masks.
Chuck, and when she talked in those tones, I learned to listen. Chuck, my wife Leanne, asked, why are we not remembering these people? It was late May 2020, and the number of COVID deaths had approached the then unthinkable toll of 100,000. That Sunday, May 24th, the New York Times published a front page with many of their names. And following a prodigious editorial task to gather the names and just a little snippet of information about each person, they had lines that read things like this. Jorge Casillas, 75, Manchester, Connecticut, put himself through college. Or Alan Lund, 81, Washington, conductor with the most amazing ear. And then 6 months later, Leanne Bauman Kirchner, 79, teacher, mother, friend. Not dead of COVID, but perhaps she was collateral damage of an overtaxed health system. Why are we not remembering these people, she had asked? It's not convenient, I would reply. And so we rush to forget. We did this in the wake of the 1919 flu epidemic that killed my grandfather. We rushed to forget after the Black Death and the 16th century plagues. And so I sat last week in a shopping center with a friend who pronounced COVID is over, perhaps a little prematurely. But indeed, the shoppers were back with Lululemon stretch pants and cute little dogs that they had acquired during the pandemic. How do we process the pain? Somebody's got to be blamed. It must be Joe Biden's fault, or Donald Trump's, or Anthony Fauci, or Gavin Newsom, or anybody but me. But thoughtful, compassionate Christians draw on our ancient rituals, adapting them to circumstance. And when Leanne died, Claremont Presbyterian Church used its integrity to form the first full-scale online memorial service. We borrowed music from Geri, from my friend Kim Richmond, from a flash mob in Spain, and from my brother Art. With John Watt's help, we captured words from Karen and tributes from family and friends. No one could be in this sanctuary, but more than 200 people attended from around the world. From Seattle to Santa Cruz, from Boston to Florida, from London to Lisbon, from Oslo to Mumbai. We honored and remembered her by applying imagination and ingenuity to our traditional liturgies. And that same spirit of Christian ingenuity applied to ancient rituals is with us tonight in this Requiem. Using the ancient form of the Latin Mass, Geri DeMasi has composed 93 pages of music, note by note. Chuck, why are we not remembering these people? Leanne said. We are, dear. Listen to the music.
As we leave tonight, I leave you with these words from Psalm 90. Satisfy us in the morning with your steadfast love, so that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Make us glad for as many days as we have been afflicted, and for as many years as we have seen evil. Let your work be manifest in your people and your glorious power to their children. Let the favor of God be upon us. Establish the work of our hands. Amen.